When you walk into a cathedral, you're focusing on the vivid stained glass, the soaring arches, the awe-inspiring paintings. Nobody's focusing on the load-bearing beams. But the internet is flooded with advice for world-building countries that's about drawing borders, placing rivers, and choosing government types. Now, none of that is wrong, but it's just structure. A cold, impersonal blueprint that's not bringing colour and flavour to your world building. Because a country, even a fictional country, isn't just geography, politics, or even a people. It's the story those people tell themselves about what home means and who they are. And if you don't know what that story is for your fictional countries, you're missing an opportunity to make your world building more emotionally charged and turn your countries into storytelling engines. And it just takes 3 simple questions. Every country has a founding story, a national myth, not the factual history, but the legend they tell themselves. This is the dream. In The Lord of the Rings, Gondor believes it's the last bastion of honour holding back the horrors of Mordor. The Fire Nation believes it's bringing progress to the world stuck in the past. Westeros founds itself in stories of chivalry and tradition. The divide between what a country claims to be and what it actually is, that's your storytelling engine, and we'll get to that shortly. But this question, the dream, lays the foundation for so much world building. The dream acts as a North Star, guiding all your decisions from pageantry to politics. We are a divinely touched people makes everyone else a conversion project. We survived a great betrayal produces paranoid isolationists. We are the vanguard produces restless explorers who sail off the edge of the map. Want to see this in action? Write your own fantasy country's dream in 1 sentence. If you're not sure what the dream is, consider. What is every schoolchild taught is their nation's purpose? What does every citizen believe is promised to them? And now you know your dream, well, you know a lot more. Because the dream manifests in fabric as your flags and heraldry. Think about the symbols, colours and mottos that best represent it. Your government reflects who the dream says deserves power. A warrior queen founder produces a feminist military aristocracy. A dream where the people rose together produces a ruling council and a socially mobile society. Look at everything through the lens of the dream. Not just heraldry and government, but festivals, cultural milestones, and education systems should all be inspired by the same story. Let's see it in action on World Anvil. Solara is a theocracy founded where the sun god touched the earth. Their dream? We are the children and the carriers of the light. They don't see themselves as conquerors. They're emissaries. They believe they're generous, sharing their blessing with the world. And how does that dream manifest in their culture? Through blue and gold heraldry, with a 9-ray sunburst. In coins minted with that same symbol, and round shields with sharp gilded rays around their edges. The dream informs every aspect of life in Solara, from government to daily routines. A dawn council ruling from the Temple of First Light. Lantern festivals, solstice ceremonies, and public prayers every sunrise. A good Solaran embodies the light. And for Solarans, night isn't a time of rest, it's a time of spiritual danger. The neighbouring kingdom of Lunara, with varied seasons and a ring of mountains that block the sun, is viewed as an unreliable place of temptation and innately suspicious. One world-building decision and a whole national perspective snaps into focus. So now you have your dream, let's flip it on its head. Because the dream is the version of history where your ancestors were absolutely definitely the good guys. The darkness is the version where they weren't. Think of the dream as the PR statement. But what's the internal memo nobody is allowed to read? It might be a truth the dream was built to cover up. It might be a trauma or truth nobody wants to face, or a future threat no one is ready to admit. And there may be more than one darkness lurking in your country. Gondor's main darkness during The Lord of the Rings is that the line of kings has failed, and a mad steward rules the kingdom in denial and decline. That's the truth nobody wants to admit. The Fire Nation's darkness is that their progress is built on the bones of the air nomads and the subjugation of the Earth Nation. Westeros' darkness is, while noble families murder and maneuver, a supernatural threat blooms beyond the wall, and peasants suffer. So what is your country's darkness? The truthful sentence no one in the country is allowed to express. If you're not sure, ask yourself, what is this country ashamed of? Or, what should they be ashamed of? If the answer is nothing, my country is and always has been wholly benevolent, then your history is propaganda. Look deeper. And once you have your darkness, make it visible on the map, in the physical manifestation of your world. It might look like a fortress on a contested border that the dream still calls a missionary settlement. It might be the city quarter that's visibly poorer because its residents are conquered people or refugees. Racism, prejudice, darkness that calcifies into grudges. Maybe your kingdom rejects a trade deal because of a festering grudge formed 500 years ago. Let's see this at work in our example project, Solara, over on World Anvil. It turns out, in this world, humans were not the first sapients to inhabit the land. There were animal folk who lived here before, but they didn't convert to the sun religion when the humans arrived. Because of that, the animal folk were displaced over generations. Their sacred sites were repurposed as Solaran temples. The official history says they were uncivilized creatures who mysteriously disappeared back into the wilds. Now look at the map of Celestia, the capital city. The oldest quarter is the Elm Quarter, where homes on the winding streets seem more grown than built. And they're just a little too small for the average human, so they're rented out cheaply to the poorest in society. And over here on the edge of the city is Lunara's embassy, the country they don't trust. The Temple of First Light prefers to keep the Lunarans as marginalized as possible because they aided the animal folk and gave them refuge. Your country's darkness should be visible if people know where to look. And now you have your fantasy country's dream and darkness, you have something else too. You have a powerful new nexus of character alignment. Characters who embody the dream are your idealists. Characters who know the darkness, or suspect it, are your cynics. Characters the darkness has personally damaged can become your rebels and countercultures, often the dispossessed. And the friction between them adds conflict and texture to the culture of your country. This prevents your fantasy country becoming a cultural monolith, or worse, a planet of hats, which you can learn more about in this video. But I promised you 3 questions, so once you have your dream and your darkness, how about a divide? So your fantasy country's held together for a while, maybe even centuries. What could possibly tear it apart? The divide is how the darkness rises to the surface and becomes unavoidable and volatile. In story terms, it's an inciting incident, something that lights the powder keg of tensions you've set up between your dream and your darkness. Gondor's divide is the return of the king. Denethor would literally rather burn alive than face the dark truth and lose power in the process. The Fire Nation's divide is Zuko's betrayal. The Fire Lord's own son awakening to the darkness, rejecting the dream of conquest, and siding with the Avatar and the other nations. Westeros' divide is the chaos that ensues after Ned Stark is killed, and the White Walkers and dragons the noble houses have no answer for when the winter comes. So how do you figure out your country's divide? Well, what is the powder keg ready to ignite? The friction between your dream and your darkness. What is the event or evidence that could reveal the gap between the dream and the darkness? Or who has been suffering and is ready to speak up? And there's one more important thing for your divide. At the centre is a character, often the one who becomes the instigator of a movement. Someone who sees the darkness and refuses to look away and keep quiet. And there are a few common archetypes for this character: the insider, the outsider, and the accident. The insider who defects was raised inside the dream. They believed it completely. And then they saw the darkness firsthand. The insider knows the system. They know who to talk to and they know what evidence exists. They also carry the weight of regret, because exposing the darkness means betraying everyone they love. And then there's the outsider who sees clearly, a character with no cultural blinders. They see the darkness because they simply haven't been taught to ignore it. This can be the princess from another land sent to marry the crown prince, or a hero from outside the country's borders recruited to slay a monstrous threat. Whoever they are, they see what those raised in the dream can't or won't admit. And finally comes the accidental truth teller. The scholar who unearthed the wrong document, the archivist who stumbled into the restricted archive. They weren't looking for the darkness, they tripped and fell into it. And now they face an impossible choice. Do they bury what they found, or speak and lose everything? They didn't sign up to be a revolutionary, they just wanted to finish their dissertation. So, who is the character at the centre of your divide? You don't necessarily have to choose this right now, and there could be more than one. And by the way, there's no guarantee that this central character is going to be successful, build a revolution, or engage a movement. Because not every divide breaks cleanly. Your world may have failed truth-tellers in its past, or evidence that was contained before it spread. This adds tension and stakes to your story. My video on world-building revolutions has a whole section on how revolutions and social movements can fail. But for now, let's create a divide moment for Solara. A devout, idealistic scholar is researching land records near sacred sites when she finds the original settlement charters. Animal folk place names have been crossed out. Orders from the Dawn Council to dam the rivers supporting animal folk villages, and burning out forests that were once their homes. Our scholar publishes, expecting the temple to embrace the truth. Instead, they denounce her as a heretic. She just wanted to finish her research, and now half the country calls her a traitor, while the other half asks questions they'd been afraid to ask for centuries. Overnight, cryptic paw print graffiti with unrecognisable glyphs starts appearing in the Elm Quarter. The scent of change is in the air, and we see a fantasy country in motion. Of course, you've built culture and heraldry and government and architecture with your questions. But you've also built authentic feeling problems and quest hooks and living, breathing peoples just ready for your stories. And this all comes from just those three questions: the dream, the darkness, and the divide. So when you're world building your fictional country, what is its dream? What is its darkness? And what is its divide? If you can't answer all three, you've found the hole at the heart of your world building. And filling it in will bring plot and depth and authenticity to your world. Drop your fantasy country's dream, darkness, and divide sentences into the comments. The darker and the more uncomfortable, the better. And if you're thinking, doesn't this mean my country is basically a lie wrapped in a trauma? Yes, congratulations. That's what makes it feel real, and what makes it emotionally resonant, with lots of POVs who believe strongly in their causes and who are probably unreliable narrators. And once you have your dream, darkness, and divide, how about a reliable template for kicking off a revolution? For that, you'll need the 5 pillars of revolution, which will completely transform how your truth-teller character overthrows the lies of the status quo. For fictional use only, of course. Then grab your hammer and go world build.